you may remember, or you are all familiar on how user management and the login screen of Euclid are. Basically, you know that this is how you enter your credentials to log into a Euclid instance. And this is how super users will manage users in Euclid by creating new users and assigning new roles. This can be a problem if you are part of a large organization that have a lot of users and a lot of Euclid instances. Now I will quickly show how the single sign-on can work within your organization. You can see now the classic introductory page to Euclid. In this local instance of Euclid, I have installed or set it up for the single sign-on feature using Microsoft's Azure Active Directory. If I were to access Euclid by pressing here, you will see that we are not anymore redirected to Euclid login page. We are now in Microsoft Active Directory login page. Now I can enter my credentials for this domain in Active Directory with the password. And you can see that this is all happening within the Active Directory webpage. Euclid does not know anything about this user or password at this moment. Once we press sign in, well, Active Directory asks us about if we want to stay signed in. That's a personal preference, but let's say yes. And once we got that okay, username and password were correct, and the Active Directory verify them, Euclid will get the username and the groups this person belongs to through the Active Directory communication. As you can see here, we have a normal Euclid installation, and we have used an external identity provider. With the single sign-on you have seen now, you can see that things have changed from how they were in the past. In the past, without single sign-on, users were created and managed in the Euclid database. Now, with the single sign-on, users are centrally managed in the company's identity provider. In this example, this was Azure Active Directory. And also, without single sign-on, the user admins, the super users, were assigning the roles and legal entities in the Euclid database using Euclid interface. Now, these assignments are done in the identity provider. In this case, we know that, for example, Azure Active Directory has the concept of groups. However, these groups in Azure Active Directory need to be linked to existing roles and legal entities that are defined in Euclid. This setup has a number of benefits for both end users and IT administrators. For end users, the benefits are that they can use the same credentials for logging into their Apple computer, enterprise applications, and now finally Euclid. For IT admins, this simplifies the user management and the credentials administration. I think that both end users and IT administrators are mindful on how painful can it be to forget your Euclid password. Now, resetting a password will follow common procedures of your organization. Finally, also for end users, the single sign-on will mean that once the user is signed in to any web enterprise application, they will not need to re-enter the credential for moving to a different enterprise application. So think that you have Active Directory and you are able to use Microsoft Word Online. Now you will easily transition to Euclid without entering the new time the credentials. And for IT administrators, if your organization happens to host several Euclid instances, Now the users will be centrally managed in a single database in your identity provider. Before, you had to manage and update all the users across every single Euclid instance. But now you know the benefits, and now maybe you want to move ahead on implementing single sign-on on your Euclid installation. So, well, there are these design steps. These steps are meant to be done by your scientific data management policies and regulatory setup rather than by IT administrators. So the first step will be to review which of the existing roles and legal entities that you have defined in Euclid are still needed within your organization. It may be that after several years, you have simplified the original setup, or you actually want to review how you want to set up the access to different data sets or other entities in Euclid. Now is the best time to review how you do it and streamline it. Once you have defined which roles, legal entities, and if you are using instance-based security groups in Euclid database, you can update them to reflect what you designed before. And for that, you will use Euclid web interface. And as you are familiar already with the user roles, and some of you may see the group possibility in your super dashboard. But now this is the part from the scientific and regulatory experts. And once you have done this work, it's time for the IT people to kick in. In order to implement the single sign-on, the user or the IT administrators will need to install or update the Euclid instance to Euclid 6.14.3, the release that we have done in April 22. And once installed, they should read the configuration guide for setting up the Azure Active Directory. We have not done a guide for every single identity provider out there because we cannot support all of them, but we have been able to test this feature using the most common identity provider in corporate setting. But we have implemented this feature so that it uses a standard protocol that is implemented by most of the identity providers software in the market. So once you IT have read the configuration guide and know how to proceed, it's time to update the roles or groups or whatever your identity provider supports. And these groups that your identity provider supports should reflect what was designed in the previous design step. In this, now I'm showing here an example of how this looks in Azure Active Directory, where you have a list of groups that you can create and eventually assign to different users in your organization. So by doing this assignment to users in the organization, you assure that they can access Euclid once you have mapped. Then this is the final step, is to map these groups that you have created to different roles and groups and legal entities in your Euclid installation. To do this map, your IT people will need to edit a text file that will provide. This file will have the one-to-one assignments between the IDP concept and the concepts in Euclid. This is anyway all explained in the configuration guide. And this mapping is independent of the provider. As I said before, this is done using a standard protocol.